I usually don't ask this early, but if you could like the video and subscribe, it would mean a lot. We're so close to hitting 10,000 subscribers, and your support can really help get my content out there. Thanks. Lucas Morrow, 32. A successful Canadian architect from Toronto, passionate about his career and deeply in love with his fiancée. He's a man of integrity and believes in loyalty and truth. Lucas has a bright future ahead of him, with a dream to design some of the most iconic buildings in the city. Jessica Lee, 29. Lucas's fiancée, a lively and ambitious event planner known for her charismatic presence and a wide social circle. She loves attention and thrives on being the center of the crowd, which sometimes blinds her to what really matters. Alyssa Martin, 30. Jessica's best friend since college who struggles with alcoholism. Her addiction has derailed her career and personal life, but she's manipulative enough to keep people close, relying on Jessica for support and often pulling her into chaotic situations. Oliver Grayson, 35. Lucas's best friend and confidant, a pragmatic man who always has Lucas's back. He sees through Jessica and Alyssa but remains diplomatic, hoping Lucas will see the truth on his own. Officer Claire Bennett, 40. A no-nonsense police officer who plays a pivotal role in exposing the lies that upend Lucas's life. I could never forget the day my life began to unravel. It was a quiet Thursday evening in Toronto, and I was feeling on top of the world. I had just signed a contract to design a new high-rise in the city, a project that would make my name synonymous with luxury architecture. Everything in my life seemed to be falling into place: a great career, a loving fiancé, and a future that looked as bright as the skyline I was helping shape. But things change in the blink of an eye. It all started with Jessica's infamous parties. They weren't my thing, but I loved her, and I'd grown used to her wanting to entertain her large group of friends. These gatherings were her way of unwinding after work, her chance to flaunt her success as an event planner and, I suspect, show off our relationship. I didn't mind. We had an understanding. I'd make appearances, talk to her friends, and then retreat to the quiet of my study. That night, though, was different. Alyssa, her best friend, arrived late, as usual. Even before she walked through the door, I could hear her high-pitched laughter from down the hall. Alyssa had always been a wild card, unpredictable and erratic. She had a certain magnetism, the kind that made you want to be around her, even though you knew it would end badly. That night, she stumbled into the apartment, glassy-eyed and reeking of whiskey. "She's had a rough day," Jessica whispered to me as I shot her a concerned look. "Just let her be." Alyssa was loud, obnoxious, and her drinking had only gotten worse over the past few months. But Jessica's blind loyalty to her kept me from saying anything that night. I didn't want to cause a scene, especially with so many of Jessica's friends around. As the evening wore on, Alyssa became more unhinged. She knocked over a vase in the living room, laughed it off, and then spilled her drink on our new couch. Jessica tried to brush it aside, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. She knew Alyssa was crossing a line, yet she refused to say anything, as if protecting Alyssa from herself was more important than maintaining any sense of decorum. I couldn't take it anymore. "Hey, Alyssa, maybe it's time to call it a night?" I suggested gently, trying not to embarrass her in front of everyone. Her eyes darkened instantly. "What's your problem, Lucas? You've always had a stick up your ass." She slurred her words, waving her drink around, dangerously close to Jessica's beloved art collection. I could feel the temperature in the room drop as all eyes turned to me. I wasn't going to engage in a public fight. Not here. Not now. "Let's just sit down," I said, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Alyssa wasn't having it. She lunged forward, losing her balance and knocking over a table, sending glasses and plates crashing to the floor. Jessica hurried over to clean up the mess, and the rest of the partygoers shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene or leave. I stepped in to help, but Alyssa turned on me, eyes blazing. "You think you're better than me, don't you, Lucas? Just because you've got your fancy job and perfect life." I stayed calm. "Alyssa, I'm just trying to help." "Help?" She spat the word like it was poison. "You think you're some kind of hero? Get over yourself." That was it. I took a deep breath, ready to ask her to leave, when she did something that changed the course of my life forever. With a wild swing, she slapped me hard across the face. I stumbled back in shock, the room going silent. My cheeks stung, but what hurt more was the disbelief in Jessica's eyes. "Alyssa! Alyssa!" Jessica gasped, rushing to her friend's side. I expected her to turn to me, to ask if I was okay, to defend me. But instead she wrapped her arms around Alyssa as if she was the one who had been wronged. "I'm sorry," I began, trying to make sense of the chaos. "But she needs help, Jess. This has gone too far." Jessica's eyes flared with anger. "You don't get it, Lucas. She's my best friend. She's going through a lot right now." "And what about me?" I asked, my voice strained. "I'm your fiancée. She just slapped me in front of everyone." Jessica hesitated, glancing between me and Alyssa. I could see her torn loyalties, but it was too late. Alyssa had already begun crying dramatically into Jessica's shoulder, playing the victim as she always did. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. Jessica was willing to let me be the bad guy to protect her friend. The party ended shortly after, and Alyssa left with a few others, barely able to walk straight. I thought the worst was over, but the storm was just beginning. The next morning, I was woken up by the sound of loud knocking. I groggily made my way to the door, only to find 2 police officers standing there. "Lucas Morrow?" one of them asked. "Yes," I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. "We have a warrant for your arrest," the officer said, pulling out handcuffs. "You're being charged with assault." I froze. "What? There's been a mistake." But there was no mistake. Alyssa had gone to the police, accusing me of attacking her at the party. She'd spun the entire event into a story where I had been the aggressor, and Jessica, my own fiancée, had backed her up. I spent the next 48 hours in jail, trying to piece together how my life had fallen apart so quickly. When I was finally released, I confronted Jessica. I hoped, she had been coerced or manipulated. But when I walked into our condo, she was sitting at the kitchen table, eyes red from crying, but posture rigid. "You have to understand," she began. "Alyssa is like a sister to me. She would never lie about something like this." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Jessica, she slapped me! You saw it! You were there! How could you back her story?" Jessica stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "She's going through a lot. She's not in the right headspace, and maybe things got out of hand, but you don't know what it's like to have a friend like that." I stared at her, feeling the last threads of my patience snapping. "You're right, I don't, because I wouldn't keep a friend who would ruin someone's life just to cover her own mess. You saw what happened, and you chose to side with her, not me." "Her! I'm not choosing sides," Jessica shouted, but the truth was evident in her voice. The argument dragged on, but there was no resolution. Jessica refused to admit Alyssa's fault, and I refused to live in a relationship where I could be betrayed so easily. I left that night, crashing on Oliver's couch while I tried to figure out my next steps. Days passed, and Jessica sent countless texts and voicemails trying to patch things up. But her words were hollow. She was more concerned with saving face than fixing what was broken between us. The arrest had shaken me, but more than that, it was the betrayal, the realization that Jessica had never truly had my back. It wasn't until a week later, when Officer Claire Bennett, the officer who arrested me, knocked on my door again, that things finally started to make sense. "Lucas," she said, "I've been doing some digging into the case. Something's not adding up." Claire had taken a personal interest in the case after seeing how distraught I was during the arrest. She'd gone back over the statements and realized that Alyssa's story had more holes than a sinking ship. It didn't take long for her to track down witnesses from the party who confirmed what had actually happened. Alyssa had been the aggressor, not me. The charges were dropped, and Alyssa was eventually issued a restraining order. But by that time, it didn't matter. The damage had been done. I'd lost trust in Jessica, and in truth, I'd lost trust in our relationship long before Alyssa's lies tore us apart. In the end, I realized that love, like architecture, needs a strong foundation to survive. Jessica had built our relationship on shallow connections and hollow loyalty, and when the weight of reality hit, it all came crashing down. Sometimes, losing everything is the only way to rebuild something stronger. I walked away from that chapter of my life with a clearer understanding of who I was and what I deserved, not just in love, but in life. Thank you for staying with me through this emotional journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and rebuilding. Remember, a relationship without trust is like a house built on sand. Have you ever experienced a moment where you had to make a tough decision like Lucas? We'd love to hear your thoughts.